You know, at the end of the day, we all need to eat. It's the most basic, fundamental fact of our lives. But as our global population keeps growing, that simple act of putting food on the table, well, it becomes one of the most complex challenges we face. So let's dive in and see if we can solve what I'm calling the great food equation.
And really, this is the question at the heart of it all, isn't it? Every single year, there are more mouths to feed. But the planet isn't getting any bigger. The amount of land we have for farming is, for all intents and purposes, fixed. So what do you do? How do you possibly produce more from less?
To really get a sense of the scale here, just look at a country like India. We're talking about a population of over 1 billion people, and it's still growing. To feed everyone, they're going to need over 250 million tons of grain every year. Just think about that number for a second. It's staggering. And it makes this big, abstract global problem feel very, very real.
So how in the world do we tackle a challenge this big? Well, we're going to break it down. We'll start with the core challenge, feeding 1 billion people. Then we'll get into the science of engineering the perfect seed. After that, we'll look at what it takes to manage a modern farm, how we protect the harvest from all kinds of threats, and finally, we'll put it all together to see what farming for the future really looks like.
All right, let's start with that fundamental problem. If we stick with the example of India, the land is already intensely cultivated. There's not really any major room to just create more farmland out of nothing. So the only path forward is to get much, much better at using the land we already have.
And this right here is the absolute crux of it. The solution isn't about expanding anymore. It's all about efficiency. We have to make every single acre of land, every drop of water, every seed we plant, work harder and produce more. That's the game now. It's an absolute necessity.
So, okay, how do we get that efficiency? Well, the whole approach can be broken down into 3 major stages. Think of it as a roadmap. First, you have to start with a better seed. That's all about improving the crop variety. Second, you have to give that amazing seed the perfect environment to grow. That's improving crop production. And third, you have to defend that plant until it's ready to be harvested, and that's all about crop protection management.
So let's start at the very beginning, with the seed itself. This is the foundation of all modern agriculture. It's literally the blueprint for the plant. And today, we are quite literally designing crops to be better suited for exactly what we need.
One of the core techniques scientists use is called hybridization. Honestly, you can think of it like guided matchmaking for plants. By crossing 2 genetically different plants, breeders can take the best traits from both parents and combine them into one new, superpowered offspring.
So what exactly are they looking for? Well, it's a whole wish list of amazing traits. Higher yield is the big one, obviously, more food per plant. But they also want improved quality. Think about wheat that has the perfect protein content for baking bread. A huge goal is resistance. Resistance to biotic threats like diseases and insects, and also to abiotic stress like drought or extreme heat. A shorter time to maturity is also a game changer, because it means farmers might be able to get 2 or 3 crops in a single year instead of just 1. And check this out. This one's really clever. Desirable agronomic characteristics. For instance, breeding for dwarfness in cereal crops means the plant wastes less energy growing a tall, useless stalk and puts all that energy into producing more of the actual grain that we eat. Smart, right?
Okay, so you've got your perfect seed, your super seed, but a champion athlete in a terrible environment isn't going to win any races. So, the second pillar is all about managing the farm itself to give that seed everything it needs to reach its full potential.
Just like us, plants have to eat. They get some of their basic building blocks, like carbon and oxygen, straight from the air and water. But all the rest, a whole bunch of essential nutrients, has to come from the soil. And we can basically split those into 2 groups. Macronutrients, which they need in pretty large amounts, and micronutrients, which they only need a tiny bit of, but are still absolutely vital for their survival. Now, if the soil is missing some of those nutrients, farmers have to add them back in. The 2 main ways to do that are with manure and fertilizers. Manure is fantastic, right? It's organic, it recycles farm waste, and it actually improves the long-term health and structure of the soil. The only downside is it can be bulky and it acts slowly. Fertilizers, on the other hand, are like a quick energy shot. They're commercially made to deliver a precise, fast-acting dose of key nutrients we're talking, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And they can lead to huge yield increases. But, and it's a really big but, if you overuse them, they can seriously damage the soil and pollute nearby water.
Besides food, the other thing that's absolutely critical is water. In a lot of places around the world, you just can't rely on rain. That's where irrigation comes in. And the systems can range from really simple dug wells to these massive canal networks or river lift systems that actually pump water straight out of rivers, and even tanks that act like small reservoirs. Getting water to the crops at the right time is an absolute game changer for yield.
And it's not just about what you put into the soil, it's also about how you plant. This technique here is called intercropping. It's so clever. By planting 2 or more different crops together in a specific pattern, say alternating rows of soybeans and corn, farmers can be incredibly efficient. The trick is to choose crops that have different nutrient needs so they're not competing with each other, and you get the most out of the soil. And what's really cool is this strategy can also help stop pests and diseases from spreading and wiping out your whole field.
All right. We've engineered the perfect seed, we've created the perfect growing environment. You'd think the job's done, but it's not. Now you have to defend your crop. This is the third and final piece of the puzzle, protecting that harvest from a whole host of threats that want to destroy it.
And here are the villains of our story. You've got weeds, those are basically any unwanted plants that show up and steal nutrients, water, space, and sunlight from your actual crop. Then you have insect pests and all sorts of diseases caused by things like bacteria, fungi, and viruses. If you don't control these guys, all of that hard work you put in before, it can all be for nothing.
Pests are especially nasty, and they attack in a few different ways. Some of them will literally cut the plant to pieces. They'll go after the roots, the stem, the leaves. Others are a bit more subtle. They'll just suck the vital juices right out of the plant cells, weakening it over time. And then you've got the ones that bore directly into the most valuable parts, the stems and the fruits, destroying the harvest from the inside out.
So how do you fight back? Well, chemical pesticides are a common tool, but we all know that overusing them can cause major environmental problems. That's why a more integrated approach is so important these days. This includes simple preventive measures, like preparing the soil properly. It involves smart techniques, like rotating your crops each year to break pest cycles. And, to bring it full circle, it means using those specially bred crop varieties we talked about that have their own built-in resistance to common pests and diseases.
Okay, so we've covered the 3 big pillars: better seeds, better farm management, and better protection. Now, let's put it all together and see what a truly effective modern farm really looks like.
And here is the most crucial takeaway of all. These strategies, they're not a menu where you can just pick one and hope for the best. The evidence is crystal clear. The biggest benefits, the absolute highest yields, come when a farmer does everything together. You need the high-quality seed, and you need the irrigation and fertilizer to help it grow. And you need the crop protection to keep it safe. They all work together to amplify each other.
And this is the system that really works. It's a complete, holistic approach. You start with the absolute best genetic potential you can get in high-quality seeds. Then, you nurture that potential with the smart, efficient use of water and nutrients. And finally, you protect that huge investment with an integrated pest management system that's not only effective, but also sustainable for the long run. This is how we solve the great food equation.
We've come such an incredibly long way since the first Green Revolution, which saved millions of lives decades ago. But the toolkit we have now is so much more powerful, so much more precise. So the question we're left with is this: as we combine genetic science, smart technology, and truly sustainable practices, what incredible advances are just around the corner? What will the next agricultural revolution even look like?